Hello, I am Dr. Thekkadath Matthew. I am the author of the book Joshua, the Odyssey of an Ordinary Man. In my book, Joshua is actually Jesus of Nazareth. I am a Catholic born in India in a Hindu civilization. People have asked me, what made me to write this book? I have to take you to a small little incident I had when I was 9 years old. Near to my house, there was a Brahmin family. In that family, there was a girl. She was about 2 years older than me. We used to call her Tamburati, which means young princess. She was married at the age of 13. Within about a year, her husband was bitten by a snake and he died. This girl was immediately transformed into a widow, such that they shaved their head. She was pasted with ashes, clad in white, and she was pushed to the back side of the house. Her life is done with. But in the traditional, ancient India, she was supposed to be jumping into the funeral pyre of her husband. When I was looking at the gross violence against women, in my research, I have found that in many instances, the seed of extreme violence is in religion. For example, in the Hindu religion of India, there was an ancient sage called Manu. He had stated that women do not deserve freedom. A woman is the shadow of a man. She must be under the protection of a man when she is a child, under the supervision of a man when she is married, and under the supervision of her son when her husband dies, or she jumps into the funeral pyre of her husband. Now, in Judaism, for example, in the Genesis story, the woman was created as a helper. There was no paternal inheritance issue. A man could divorce her at the whims and fancies, and women were subjected to atrocious treatment, and they were stoned to death in many instances. For example, stoning of a harlot was common. But my question is, how can there be a woman harlot without 100 men participating in that process every time? But have you ever heard a man sleeping with a harlot being ever stoned? And then there was this man called Joshua, or Jesus Christ. Once he had to witness a stoning scene. He approached the scene. He went into the ring of a group of men with stones in their hand, ready to stone that girl. And he lifted the hand of the harlot, raised it to the sky, and challenged the crowd, "Who amongst you without sin may cast the first stone?" So that was a drastic change that caught my mind of investigating and researching violence against women at death. In Islam, very large amount of the traditions from the Old Testaments are continued. Woman has very little value in society. She has little or no inheritance from her parents. She can be divorced by a simple statement. And recently, since the radicalization of Islam, they have targeted women to be killed. A woman with a textbook in her hand going to the school is a much more frightening sight in the eyes of a Taliban, much more frightening than the American drone circling around their head ready to drop a bomb. That is the reason why they have decided to shoot and kill women in those countries, Pakistan and many other Middle Eastern countries. So, in those three, not only in those three religions, in many religious traditions, violence against women is very common. We have heard a lot about atrocious treatment against women, such as genital mutilations. Genital mutilation is not an Islamic tradition. It is a tribal tradition. However, many of those tribes eventually proselytized to Islam, but the traditions continued, so much so that we get the impression that it is an Islamic deed. In actual fact, it is not. But the point is that atrocious activity continues even today. Now, a good many of this violence against women has been illegal. Particularly, sati in India is illegal over closer to 180 years now, and in many other countries, such atrocious activities may be illegal, but it continues. In India, very recently, some 6 men got into a bus, brutally raped a woman, a medical student, and threw her out to the street. Because there is something in the DNA of these men that they inherited through religion and religious beliefs that makes them emboldened to do some atrocious activities. That's my take on it. For example, in Steubenville, Ohio, very recently there was a girl who was drugged, dragged and raped, and the boys took her images on the cell phones and transmitted it all across. And then, that's not the worst part of it. A professor here in the University of Rochester commented about that incident in his web. He said, if the person is safely unconscious, why can't the rest of the world take the full benefit out of it? He is asking, the poor girl is unconscious, she is not directly having any pain from the rape, so why can't the others also rape? That is the attitude of a good many of the men in situations like this. So, when it comes to women and violence against, I think Joshua of Nazareth is the central figure who fought against it. Up till his time, there were very many philosophers on this earth. For example, Confucius, Buddha, the writings in Bhagavad Gita, Cicero, Akhenaten, Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, so on and so forth. But none of them came to the forefront this ferociously and fought for women and women's rights. In my book, The Life and Times of Joshua is explained in detail. In my book, the childhood of Joshua is explained. Who were his friends? Who were his teachers? What are the countries he traveled? And what are the books he read? And what made him emboldened that he was? My book, Joshua, the Odyssey of an Ordinary Man, is the story, the life and times of Jesus of Nazareth. And mainly it deals with the origin of violence against women and why a man single-handedly fought against it. Thank you.